All right, welcome back. It's another episode of 91 Reasons. It's the only reason you own a smartphone or an iPod, right? So that you can tune in every week to hear what kind of nonsense is going on with yours truly, the voice. I am Jeff Tucker. Welcome. We got a lot of big numbers last week. It was my birthday, and I put up an episode about all the places that I've snuck into, and it was really exciting to see the numbers jump. But it was weird on the Podacity, the Podomatic site that I use to host my episodes and get them onto iTunes. I expected like a major jump because we've made it all the way to 19, and I thought, gosh, with using the birthday card to guilt people into downloading, and we saw the number jump to the highest it's ever done. There were over 100 downloads on my birthday last week, the 10th, that I thought for sure we're going to make it, to the top 10 at least, the top 10, and we didn't. And it's weird because I'm not sure what their criteria is. It can't just be number of downloads on a given day. I think it's a scale of how many downloads you have versus how many you had yesterday and over the run. And also we're going to factor in people who visit your page and who embed the player and all these different things. So it's not simply just how many downloads did you have, because I guess if that were the case, then the people who are number one, other than being really popular, maybe they're just, if that was the case, they would just hit reload and download over and over again. But that would be silly, right? Who would waste that kind of time to fudge the numbers, I'm happy that people are listening and that they're responding and enjoying what I'm talking about. Because, again, like I've said every episode, that so many times you're probably sick of hearing it, we're doing something different here on 91 Reasons. We're not just going to do the movie of the week. We're not just going to do the current thing, but I will try to do that occasionally. It just depends on what's going on. I was working on, and when I say working on, it's not like I'm sitting here clacking on a typewriter, trying to come up with a byline in time for the print. The paper's going to go out in the morning. No, when I say I'm working on an episode, it means that I just sort of plant it in my subconscious and try to come up with enough angles on it to make an episode. And I'm finding that as much as I love some movies, like we just had the 30th anniversary of Ghostbusters, and gosh, what a fantastic film Ghostbusters is. And I was going to sit down, I'll do a retrospective on Ghostbusters, but I don't want to do just trivia. I don't want to do just what it made and its box office runs and blah, blah, blah. It's more about how I felt watching it and all the things that went along with that, including, yes, of course, buying all the toys that came out. Of course, they were for the cartoon and not the movie. We would have to wait nearly 20 plus years to get Ghostbuster movie toys, right? But I realized that unless I really push it, that Ghostbusters episode is going to top out. It might be 30, 40 minutes. It's not going to be these hour marathons that I've been posting. And I got to be okay with that, I like to see a little over an hour. I know that the San Diego Comic-Con wrap-up wasn't an hour. But again, that was one of those topical episodes, right? Where I'm talking about what happened this week. And maybe I haven't had a decade to ruminate on my thoughts, so you're getting just the fresh stuff. But hey, we're continuing on. This is episode 12 in the order that we're posting them. And you know what? On a side note, I just discovered on Podomatic that even though my bandwidth ratio meter resets every month, so that people who are listening, I have a certain amount of times that can be downloaded. Now, it's a pretty significant number. I don't know if I'm ever going to hit that in my lifetime, right? But the storage of the episodes has a cap. And unless I want to upgrade to a higher level, a higher tier of, dealing with Podomatic, eventually, and I'm guessing maybe 6 or 7 more episodes down the line, I'm going to run out of space. So unless I upgrade or unless I start deleting access to some of the earlier episodes, I'm not going to be able to post anymore. So I'm trying to figure that out. I'm trying to figure out, do I want to run a Kickstarter promotion to raise money to go to the highest level? I don't know, because if I was going to run a Kickstarter promotion for 91 Reasons, it would be for actual professional equipment. Because again, those of you who listened early on know that I went from holding a mic to holding a mic and a windscreen to now I have a mic on a stand with a windscreen. But the microphone doesn't have an actual base stand. It has one of those clamps that you screw on, and the desk I'm on doesn't. They don't mesh. So it ends up falling and clank during the episode. So I actually have it on an old base for a lamp. So yes, we have Doc Brown the heck out of this thing, so that when you listen to an episode about Back to the Future, you can imagine that the equipment that it was recorded on is a lot like something that Doc would have used in Back to the Future. Now, it's not making toast or eggs for me like in 1885, but it is helping me run this episode so that I can get it posted, right? And do I say right a lot? I think I've noticed that. I say right a lot, right? Doesn't matter. Okay, so what are we talking about today, kids? Well, if you saw from the title of the episode, Infamous. Hold on, my mic is, as we talk about it, moving around. Okay. As the title suggests, Infamous. I've done a lot of weird stuff, and it's not like I will go down in infamy. No, Infamous just means that I'm one of those weird guys that is not famous, but has the trappings of someone who could be famous. And what I mean by that is, let's go back to the beginning. I'm going to start at the beginning. I grew up in Norwalk, California, which is wedged between, right in the middle of La Mirada, Downey, Bellflower, and it's a small town. We didn't have a mall. We had the Norwalk Square, which was a square-shaped shopping center that was constantly in fear of going out of business. That's where my mom worked, in the finance company, and where we rented videos at Video Depot, and where you could get a slush puppy at the Sophisticated Mutt, located under the clock tower, for about 10 seconds. Or you could, I bought some Empire Strikes Back jewelry at Rings and Things. Rings and Things. And it was the home to the first Gothic store this is way before Hot Topic. There was a store called Rude Looks in the Norwalk Square where they sold a lot of black clothing, and there was a coffin in there, and it was really creepy, and everybody was concerned. All the parents were concerned. What is this crazy store moving in? I don't know, but the kids are dressing like ghouls. But in Norwalk, that's all we had, Norwalk Square. If we wanted to go to a mall, we had to go all the way to Cerritos. You know, those ads for the Cerritos Auto Square that featured Ernest 5 or 6 years after he died? The mall is right next to that, off the 605 freeway at South Street. But Norwalk was a small town. But it's weird that even though we were a small town, we had something a lot of small towns don't have. And that's, we had a gigantic, unused high school that was built in, I think, the 30s or 40s. And it went out of business, stopped being used, I think, in the either the late 60s or the early 70s. Excelsior High School, huge, sprawling complex that, again, because Norwalk was so small, the high school that I went to didn't have its own football stadium. So we had to go all the way to Excelsior to play football games, get on the bus, because we only practice at high school. We actually play at Excelsior. And even Excelsior wasn't the greatest stadium because it only had bleachers on one side. So home and away were on the same side. I'm sure that caused many a fight. It's funny, too, because I always say that as a guy who never really got sports, I actually went to every football game in high school. Every Friday night there was a football game. I was at the football game. Why, do you ask? Oh, I don't know. Might have been the cheerleaders that were stationed down front. And I had a rotating fascination / semi-stalking relationship with at least one cheerleader every year. So So volatile, and not volatile, but so sad. The word is sad. So sad, in fact, that one of the cheerleaders that I put flowers on her door and with a love note, she called me and was like, my mother doesn't want you to come around the house anymore. I was like, okay. We actually, my wife and I, we ran into her at a Sizzler about 15 years ago. My wife wanted to go say hi, and I was like, you don't need to go over there. I was never a thing with her. This is not something that's going to be a successful reunion. We only did a couple of drama plays together. So my wife went over. She wasn't going to listen. She said, "Hi, I'm Jeff Tucker's wife. I'm Rachel. I married Jeff Tucker. You went to high school with him." And this girl looked right at Rachel and said, "I have no idea who you're talking about." And Rachel came back to the table, and I said, "What did you expect? What did you expect? I told you how this was going to end." But Norwalk, having Excelsior High, it was not being used as a high school, so it was actually used as a movie set. And Norwalk, for being such a small town, had a number of pretty decent productions run through there while I was growing up. The biggest being Grease 2. Grease 2, Rydell High was Excelsior High School filled in for Rydell High for the entirety of Grease 2. Not that anybody fondly remembers that, but it was a big studio release. Excelsior also was the high school in a TV movie called High School USA. Now, NBC used to do these movies of the week where they would contract all of their sitcom stars to do a movie. So Michael J. Fox was roped into doing this really cheesy high school movie. But it's notable because it stars Michael J. Fox and Crispin Glover 2 years before Back to the Future. It also has Bob Denver and Dobie Gillis and a whole host of sitcom stars from all through the years of television in a story about the nerds trying to get back at the jocks through a car race. It's a typical nonsense, but it being a Michael J. Fox production, I've actually seen it a lot. He also did one called Poison Ivy, and in both, his love interest was Nancy McKeon. So Joe from Facts of Life, who was my favorite, was in both movies. So it was a win-win at my house. And I recorded it on beta when it aired on TV and watched it all the way through, again and again, with commercials. Yes. But Norwalk, Excelsior was the place for both of those productions. We also had Golf and Stuff, where they filmed the golf scenes from Karate Kid. And I think my friend David his back is to the camera during the arcade sequence. They also filmed an episode of Chips. That was a big deal because you didn't have to leave your house. We went right to our front lawn and watched Ponch and John with their motorcycles on a trailer be pulled right by our house, and that was really cool. I can't figure out what episode that is. So if you know which episode of Chips they filmed in Norwalk, I don't remember the plot, but I would love to know what episode that is. Only because my friend Carl Harmon was filmed at Golf and Stuff for that episode, coming down the water slide, and they freeze frame him like, hey, and then the credits. And I only saw it once. And this is aired way before VCRs were in every home. But I'd love to see that episode again. But I've done a lot of searches, and I can't, even though most of the Chips episodes are available, I can't find them anywhere. But every time a production would come to Norwalk, we would try to figure out if we could get a part in whatever it was. Didn't matter. So for a while, my friend David and I attended this performing arts school at Excelsior every Saturday, which was cool because it was taught by a real actor named Jed Mills, who had real credits. It was very good class. We learned a lot about acting. The funny part is that all the kids who attended the school were bussed in from Los Angeles, and David and I basically literally rode our bikes down to it. Now, the weird part is we weren't enrolled. We just showed up and stayed with the class until we thought someone would tell us to leave, but they never did. So we just attended that class. But we could see the productions moving in every time we went to school. So one time David and I go to school. This is around 1985, maybe early '86, but certainly not anywhere past that. And the back end of the school had been turned into what was a prison. They had a guard tower, and they had a bus that was all gray with bars on the window. And we were like, "Oh, this is so cool." It's a They turned the school into a prison. What we've always assumed school was, they have made real. So David and I, because we had no social grace, and we knew that if you didn't ask, they weren't going to offer, we found a security guard, somebody involved with the production, and we went up to the guy and we said, "Hey, look, we're in the acting school here. We're actors. We need to be in your movie. So there's got to be a part for two young, handsome nerds like us." And the guy laughed at us and he said, dude, it's called Reform School Girls. It's about women in prison. And David and I laughed. And I think we might have even tried to argue, like, look, we could be guards. No. It's an all-woman production. Oh. So we left dejected. Now, the great part is that we watched the production as much as we could, and David and I even went to go see Reform School Girls at Alondra 6 when it came out, and just laughed the whole time at all the locations that we had seen from the movie, which were literally, 5 minutes down the road. So that was pretty cool. It had a lot of nudity in it, so it was a win-win for everybody. But we didn't get a part in it. Now they ended up doing a movie in Excelsior just a couple of years later called Monster High, where aliens come down to Earth and have to play a basketball game for the fate of mankind. I don't know. It's really stupid. But David, hey, to his credit, David bugged these guys so much that he got a part in the movie. He doesn't have any speaking lines, but you can put the movie in Monster High, and there's David. And I'm like, man, I should have hung out more with David. So that was pretty cool. But no, we didn't get any Excelsior parts. And I remember working at the mall, and I'm going to do a whole episode about working at Spencer Gifts, because that was an adventure, almost as good as working at Blockbuster. But while I was working at Cerritos Mall, they filmed Coneheads out in the parking lot. Remember Coneheads with Dan Aykroyd? There's a scene where, I think he's a driving instructor, and they use the Cerritos Mall parking lot for some strange reason. And the weird part to that was they sent flyers around to all the stores. So Spencer Gifts got a flyer that said, Dan Aykroyd will be here. They're going to be filming Coneheads. He'll be... Now, they couldn't hide it, because the minute the guy shows up on set in a Conehead, we know what the movie is. So you can't really hide that. But they told us in that flyer we weren't to approach Dan Aykroyd. We weren't to ask for any autographs, that he was there working. It was really kind of a jerk move, So I think a lot of us retailers in there were like, well, Dan Aykroyd can make whatever movie he wants in the parking lot. We don't care. But from listening to any of the other episodes that I've always had a fascination with the movies and movie production and props and writing and all of that. So I had decided early on that I wanted to be in a movie. I auditioned for a lot of stuff, never got anything worth mentioning, obviously, because you're listening to a podcast from a guy who's never given his credits. And it's weird because I'm not one of those guys who likes to give you his credits. I'm only going to talk about the few things that I've done here because they're interesting stories. It's not simply just, well, these are the things I've done, here's my resume. Because I'm not that guy. I've never, ever said in a situation, do you know who I am? That's just so obnoxious, and I wouldn't ever do that, But I wanted to be in a production of some sort. So in the 80s, this was hard to do. This was not easy the way it is now. There was a lot of weirdness. And moving in, even into the 90s, it was not easy. Anything pre-internet, if you wanted the information, you had to know somebody. You had to keep your ear to the ground and really pay attention. The first big one was when I found out they wanted extras to be in Back to the Future 2. And I left school that day and drove straight to Universal Studios and tried to get in there. Like, look, we don't know who you are, sir. We've already got that. And it's weird because if I'd thought about it for a second, I would have realized that for these kids in the future, they would have needed them months ago for costume fittings and all that. But when it comes to Back to the Future, I usually leap before I look, right? So, anyways, I didn't make it in Back to the Future 2. But we did get a thing where we heard on the radio that they were looking for a lot of extras to be in a movie with Michael Jackson. So, hey, we went. My buddies and I, we went, and we drove all the way out to the back end of the valley to this. I don't even remember the name of the studio. I think it was Raleigh Studios, but that might be wrong. It was just some studio in the middle of nowhere, and we were going to be in a Michael Jackson movie. We didn't know what it was. We didn't care. It was, were there cameras? Yes. Then okay, we're on board. And turns out it was for Moonwalker. Remember his big movie that never got released in America? It was on video, but it was never a theatrical thing. I think it was a theatrical release overseas. You know, where he has a group of kids and they're battling the evil Joe Pesci, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But at the finale of Moonwalker, he sings Come Together by the Beatles at a concert. So we got to be in the concert. They gave us glow sticks, and we got to watch Michael Jackson himself lip sync to Come Together at least 12 times. It was really exciting the first couple of times, and then it got to be tedious, as any production is. You know, once the novelty wears off, the tedium of production it's absolute boredom. And this is before cell phones, before laptops. You brought a paperback and you read a book in between. Now for Moonwalker, I didn't know that, so we just sat there. Now to their credit, because he had a big sponsorship with Pepsi, they had all the Pepsi you could drink, and on the way out, they gave each of us a $20 bill. So I thought that was pretty cool. Now, you can't see me in the movie, at least not that I'm aware of, but hey, I did a whole day of work on it, you know? The only thing I'd ever done prior to that was I was at Disneyland one day, and I was very young, maybe 4, 5, maybe even younger, and my mother told this story again and again, where I went up to see a character, and there was somebody with a camera, and then a guy came over to my mom and had her sign a release. Like, hey, we just filmed your son, and you want to sign this release? She's like, what's it for? He's like, well, it's for Disney. And it turns out that was the opening of the wonderful let me try it again, the Wonderful World of Disney TV show. So if I can find that clip, and I had found it before, I think you can see me for half a second from the back of my head. But hey, I was on TV before it was cool to be on TV, right? But no, in a professional manner, the first really big thing I did was Greg and I, and you know Greg from the Sneaks episode, where I talked all about all the stuff Greg got us into. But I mentioned briefly that we heard they were filming a Mel Gibson movie at the Los Alamitos Air Force Base. So we drove down, and when they had this really charismatic guy who was the head of the extras department, and he gave this really long pep talk about what the movie was about. And at the time, it was a movie called The Rest of Daniel, and he gave us the whole plot. And then he told us, you know, we're looking for people. You're not going to be extras, because extras is boring. You're going to be background artists. We're like, okay, dude, whatever. Now, he was doing this pitch because all these people were going to work for free. Now, Greg and I had found that there was a small number of people who were going to be paid, and they were going to be paid scale, which was like $100 and something a day. So Greg bullied his way and got us checks. So I thought that was fantastic. But you can actually see us in the movie. You can see Greg and I both in the movie. I'll put that clip on. It's at the, if you've ever seen the movie, it was released as a film called Forever Young, directed by Steve Miner. And the big deal was that Mel Gibson had agreed to do this movie so that Warner Brothers would finance his directorial debut, The Man Without a Face, which went into production right after this one. So this was his gimme to the studio. It's about a guy who gets frozen and gets awakened in the future, which is the present day. and how he deals with it. And it's a cute movie, but if you've ever seen it, it is a really lame ending where, in order to rectify the damage that's been done to his life, he goes from being a young, virile Mel Gibson to an old man almost overnight, so he can what? Die with this woman that's had a life without him. It's a really strange movie. It's supposed to be sweet, but it's one of those weird movies where I don't think they thought this through on paper first, because it's a little weird. It's a little weird, but it does have Elijah Wood, who we met that day, and Jamie Lee Curtis. Now, we filmed 2 or 3 days on the airstrip for that scene, so it was a lot of fun, and I learned a valuable lesson. And the valuable lesson that I learned was, if you're doing extra work in the movies or TV or whatever, you don't want them to give you a prop. Props are death in the extra business. And why do I say that? Aren't props supposed to make it? Well, yes and no. On Forever Young, they gave me a video camera, so I would look like a tourist filming the air show. And in the movie, you could see the camera very clearly and me filming all the planes, right? But the problem is, they hand you the fake, or not the fake, but the video camera that doesn't work. And then at the time, they took a Polaroid of me, and then they stapled it. And that meant I've got a prop that belongs to the company, and I'm not allowed to leave until I give the prop back. Which, if you're doing a 12 or 13 hour day on a movie, having to wait in a line at the end to hand your prop back is a hassle and a half. So after that, I was really vigilant not to get a prop if I did any extra work, only because I didn't want to be beholden to that line at the end. But that was fun, I got so close to being right on camera as the only guy on camera. Mel Gibson tries to go to the air show, and he walks up to the gate, and he's trying to get in. The woman says, "You need a ticket. Do you have your ticket?" And he gives her a look and walks off. Now, I'm the guy in line behind him, and when he walks off, I walk up and give her the ticket. I was so excited because I'm going to be on camera. So the first time the director, they go, "Okay, rolling, background, action, the whole bit." And as I walk up behind Mel Gibson, I looked at the camera. So they do the scene, and afterwards the assistant director comes over, and he goes, "You looked in the camera." I was like, oh, I'm sorry. He says, "If you do that again, we're going to throw you out of here." I was like, oh my God, they're serious about this. So the next take, I didn't look in the camera. But in the finished movie, as soon as she tells Mel Gibson he has to have a ticket, the scene cuts. You don't see me in that shot, so it's kind of a bummer. But you do see me in the background of the other shots, which is pretty cool. But that was my first real, we're on a movie set making a movie. And you know what? Mel Gibson was really cool because they gave Greg a prop, but it was an easy prop. It was a bag of stale popcorn. So at one point he offered, "Hey, you want some popcorn?" And Mel was like, "Hey, no thanks, man." And it was like, that's Mel Gibson. That's Martin Riggs right there. That's really cool. At the time, I mean, come on, Mel Gibson was a huge star. So that was really cool. And, Jamie Lee Curtis from Halloween and Elijah Wood from Back to the Future 2? And the upcoming Radio Flyer? Oh, and eventually he'll be in Lord of the Rings. We forgot about that one, right? But I got a real taste for extra work, and it was a lot of fun. The only problem is that when you're working, you can't just drop everything and go to the movie set to be in a movie. High school was different. We just ditched and went and did Michael Jackson. But as I started working, hey, responsibility falls in, and you can't just take off. So it would be a while before I did more extra work. And what happened simply was the Spencer Gifts location at Cerritos Mall that I was the assistant manager at went out of business. It closed its doors. And I'll do a really cool episode about what it's like to run Spencer Gifts all the way till the last day when you shut the doors, because that was really cool. But it was also sad because we all lost our jobs. But being let go from Spencer's afforded me a a few months of unemployment, and I supplemented that by really figuring out how to be an extra in the movies. And back then, it was really complicated. You had to physically go, I'm sure you think you still have to, go down to Central Casting, because they're the main hub of extra work, or they were in the day. You'd get in line, you'd pay, I think you pay money. I think it was $30 or $40 to get in their system. Like, what a racket, right? And they would take a Polaroid of you. Again, no digital cameras yet. And then they'd keep you on file, an actual physical file before all the computers, right? So how it would work is you'd get up in the morning, and I did this every day. You get up in the morning, you call the 800 line, and it would be, thank you for calling Central Casting. As of today, there are no open projects. So fine, you'd hang up. You'd call back every 45 minutes or so. No projects at this time. And then you'd call back, and it would go, hi, this is so-and-so, and thanks for calling. We're currently looking for 35 young men who look between 18 and 25 who have this kind of look. If that's your look, call this number. You'd hang up and call immediately. Yeah, I'm the guy. And then they'd pull your file. Now, it was funny because the picture that I took for the Polaroid, my hair was styled. And I remember the first couple times I called, they're like, ooh, I don't know, your look is a little extreme. And I'm like, hey, no, I look totally normal. When I show up, I'll be totally normal. So the first one I booked, because I promised I would look totally normal, was Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, the remake with Daryl Hannah. It was a TV movie. And they called us out to a drive-in in the Valley, in the middle of the night. The call time was like 10 o'clock at night. So I can remember, I went and got a Coke, and I drove out to the drive-in, and they cattle called us all into a thing and told us what he had to do. And what a mistake I made. Because it wasn't like we're at the snack bar and we're in line to get food. No. I was there for an action sequence. So we were at the entrance of the drive-in, and when the guy yelled action, we ran out of the drive-in into the street because the 50-foot woman was attacking us. This went on all night. We must have did that run 30, 40 times. Back to one, and we'd all trudge back to one and do it again. Now, it was tedious. It was hard because you're running at a sprint. But it was fun because I can remember being a young guy and meeting a lot of older people there who had done extra work for years. Like, this was their job. This was their source of income. So I got a real, immersive education in extra work. And I don't know if it scared me or what, but only because I don't know if it's what I wanted to do. It was nerve-wracking getting up every day and calling that line, and then when they announced something, calling another number before anybody else called to fill it up so you could actually get the job and get the pay. So it was quite involved. And you didn't get paid that night. You got a check like 2 weeks later in the mail with all the taxes taken out, But it was cool because, you never know what production was going to come up. And I was rewarded for all of that tedious work when I called and they needed people to be in Beethoven Second, the big St. Bernard movie. Now, this was great because I knew the star of the movie was Charles Grodin. Well, the star of the movie is the dog, right? But Charles Grodin was the father. Now, I haven't done an episode, but the reason I'm in entertainment is due to a handful of really influential entertainers. And one of those guys is Charles Grodin. He wrote a book called It Would Be So Nice If You Weren't Here. And I picked it up at the bookstore at the mall one time. And this is a fantastic book about what it's like to be in showbiz and what it's like to have ups and downs and be at the top of your game and then you can't get a job. So I idolized Charles Grodin. And I know that sounds weird, but the guy's really funny. His dry sense of humor. If you've seen Midnight Run is one of the best comedies of the 80s that's not about high school. And it's this is when Robert De Niro really flexed his comic muscles, other than obviously King of Comedy, right? So when I found out that this is a Charles Grodin movie, I'm in. And it was even better because sometimes when you called in for the extra work, there were perks. And one of the perks was they were looking for a certain kind of car. Now, I drove a 1968 Mustang. This was exactly what they wanted, which was perfect for two ways. The first was you got an extra $30 or $40, which is fantastic, on top of what you made doing the extra work. The second was that I drove my car to the set. Now, the set that we were on for Beethoven's Second is the county fair. And the county fair was being filmed at the Disney Ranch, way up above the valley, right? Beautiful, beautiful place where they filmed Old Yeller and hundreds of Disney movies and other movies. Like, it's just the most beautiful place you've ever seen, with lakes and a covered bridge. And they had this entire setup of a county fair, and I got to drive right up to it and park my car in the set, which was good. Number two, because they bust all the extras in. So again, remember, 12, 13-hour day, and then you get in line to get on the shuttle to take you back down to your car. So you're adding another 45 minutes to an hour. So I was able, at the end of the day when it wrapped, walked right to my car, got in, drove home. Beautiful. And it was great because I got to watch him make the movie, and I was 10 feet from Charles Grodin. Now, I didn't want to bother him because it's a movie set. It's not like you're meeting him on the street. But just being able to, like, watch the guy work, like, that's Charles Grodin. Oh, my God. And then there was another guy there, and I didn't recognize him. It was just some big chubby guy. You know, who is that guy? He looks vaguely familiar. Gosh, do you remember there was a movie in the 80s called The Wildlife, and also At Close Range, where Sean Penn's brother, Chris Penn, is in the movie. And he's thin, and he's good looking, and he's got a lot of promise. Gosh, do you remember the first time you saw Reservoir Dogs and somebody pointed out, that's Chris Penn? Well, Chris Penn was in Beethoven's Second. I didn't recognize him. He looked so heavy and bloated that when they finally put together who it was, I was blown away. He had a change as startling and dramatic as Jennifer Grey's nose job. Only he didn't go to the doctor. He went to Sizzler. But it was a cool day. You know, I was a young guy. We played football with kids that were in the movie in between takes. Because it was a Disney production, it wasn't Disney. It was at the Disney Ranch, but it was a Universal production. Because it was a big production, the food was amazing. And a lot of times when you'd call that line to get a job in the morning, you paid attention to what project it was. Because if it was a high prestige project, the food for the extras was going to be really good. If it was a cheap little thing, you probably weren't going to get fed very well. And you know what? That factored in a lot. Because when you're stuck there for the day, you either bring a pouch full of food or you pay close attention to who's doing it, because that's going to tell you what the food quality is. And on Beethoven's Second, it was roast beef. So it was very, very nice. After that, I pulled back a little just because it was really, really tedious to do this work. You have to have the right kind of mindset to be an extra. It has to be your passion. And hurry up and wait has to be your motto. Because I only did a couple of more productions after that. It's funny because I just talked about the food. I signed up to do a Kentucky Fried Chicken commercial at a high school somewhere. Only because it was Kentucky Fried Chicken. And I thought, you know what? We're going to get there. And even if it's crappy work for a commercial, we're going to get fed well. Well, imagine my surprise when we got there, and it wasn't Kentucky Fried Chicken. In fact, it was the worst extra job I've ever done. It was in a gymnasium of a high school. The premise of the commercial was that for a while, KFC had this character. It was an African-American guy who was like the manager of a local KFC, and he was constantly pushing the chicken and talking about the chicken. And in this case, he was having a boxing match with somebody, and the winner was going to get the chicken. I don't know. It was really muddled. But it was about 10,000 degrees inside that gymnasium. We were all going to die. And when it came time to break for food, we were so excited. And then everybody's just, talking about the sad trombone. Wah, wah. We walk in and I'm not kidding, it's like bologna sandwiches and a communal tub of lemonade that we're supposed to like ladle out a cup. And everybody on the whole show looked at each other and were like, we're get the hell out of here. This is ridiculous. If this goes past, I can remember there was like a revolt, and they did actually tell the director, if this goes past a certain time, we're all walking because it's too hot and the food sucks and we ain't doing it. And my voice cracked like Michael J. Fox just now, or the pimply teen from Simpsons. We're not going to do this KFC commercial unless the food and the treatment is better, Mr. Simpson. Anyways, so that wasn't a good experience. You know what? I don't think I've ever even seen that commercial, so I have no idea if you can see my arm, my face, my butt, or whatever. I don't know. So I laid back on the old Central Casting Hotline for a while, but occasionally you'd call in just to see what they were hiring for. And because I knew a lot about the movies, because I read Entertainment Weekly and Cinefex and Cinefantastique and Starlog and every other thing I can get my hands on, when I called and the phone, the answering machine said, "Hello, today we're casting for a future production of a movie called Ed Wood," I jumped at it because I knew that Ed Wood was a Tim Burton project. So I called immediately, and the gimmick to that was they were filming in like 3 weeks, but they wanted everybody to come down in a week and a half who got cast for a haircut. And I was okay with that because A, it was a free haircut, and B, they were paying $20 extra if you were willing to get your haircut. And guess what? For $20 extra, I was willing to get my haircut. So I was there with a whole line of guys. We all got our haircuts the same. We all looked like 50s teenagers. And when it finally came time to film, it was a grueling shoot. They bussed us in so we couldn't leave. We were at a really small movie theater called, I think it was called the Rialto, where they were doing the premiere of Plan 9 from Outer Space, or it's the big thing, and it's the big deal in the movie where it's the big movie premiere, and all the actors are there. Johnny Depp is there as Ed Wood. George Animal Steel is there as Tor Johnson. Sarah Jessica Parker. Tina Marie is there as Vampira. Like, it was the full. Everybody you wanted to see in the movie was there, including Tim Burton with his crazy hairdo, and they had all of us corralled. It was all young guys. We all looked the same. We were all given wardrobe to look like 50s teenagers, and there wasn't a lot of bright colors because the movie was being shot in black and white, as you know. So we got there, and I think we must have sat for 4 or 5 long hours before they even needed us. Finally, they pull us all down to the actual movie theater set, or it's a movie theater that's being used as a set. And we're all in the audience, and the guy playing the manager is supposed to come up and say, "You guys behave or you won't get the entertainment," and we're supposed to throw paper at him. Well, the first take they do it, we had been locked away for so long that they just unloaded on this guy. They threw so much crap at him, I think he fell over. So they cut, start over. And it's funny because in a scene where the manager of the movie theater is supposed to be yelling at these kids, when the camera's cut, we really got yelled at. You can't throw that much stuff at the guy. We're only going to have certain people throw it now. So they did it one more time. It didn't work. They put us back upstairs for 2 or 3 more hours, brought us back down to do it again. It was grueling. This was the longest shoot I'd ever done. It was so long, in fact, that we got into golden time, which was 1 to 8 hours was regular pay, 8 to 12 hours was time and a half, and anything over 12 was triple time, golden time. So we were all ecstatic. It was taking so long that by the end, we were making $25, $30 an hour. to be there. So we were like, hey guys, you take your time, Mr. Burton. We'll just be right here. Now I can tell you, we were there so long that day with so much downtime that the book that I brought to read, Interview with a Vampire, I finished the entire book in the day of not filming Ed Wood. But it was great because how many people can say they're in a movie as cool as Ed Wood? And of Tim Burton's films, it's my favorite. Ed Wood's a really good movie. So I'm really proud to say, like, for a microsecond, I might be in that movie visible somewhere. And even if you can't see me, I know that I was there. And that cool project pretty much ended my extra career, except for one deviation. I had decided to further my comedy career by taking all the classes at the Groundlings, and I learned a lot at the Groundlings. The Groundlings taught me how to be funny in my adult life and not just high school nonsense. But I took one last job only because it was on a day that the Groundlings school, the class was meeting. So going up, and it was at Paramount, and I had never filmed at one of the big studios. So I booked this gig called A Mother's Prayer. It's a TV movie where Linda Hamilton plays a woman who's dying of AIDS, and she's trying to find a family to take her son that she approves of before she dies. It's a very sad movie. I don't know if it's on DVD. I've got it on VHS, but I don't know if I have it. I've never seen it on DVD. But this was fun because, again, it was at a big studio. It was at Paramount. It was on their New York street. So when we got there, it was really cool. It was a full-dressed fake street with steam coming out of the manhole covers, which looked great but smelled like rotting cabbage. Oh, my God. So they round us up. The craft service was really good. It was a morning shoot, so there was a lot of breakfast items. And anytime there was a craft service table with breakfast items, there were those little boxes of cereal. So all the extras would just take them. I 3 or 4 goes right in the bag. Because if you don't take it at the beginning, you're not getting it, because he's not going to refresh it. But you can imagine the worst of worst happened on A Mother's Prayer. I tried to avoid the dreaded prop guy, and he found me anyways. And he gave me the worst prop I've ever had in a movie. He gave me a boom box the size of a small apartment that didn't work, that weighed 15 pounds. So I'm on one end of the street. The guy yells action. I walk to the other end of the street with the stupid radio, bopping to the radio in my leather jacket. And back to one, go back to the start, again, over and over, again and again. I hated that stupid radio. Wanted to give it back. So eventually they switched to the other side of the street, and I got to give the radio back, thank God. And the guy directing the extras is telling me what to do for the next shot, and I was really shocked because it's like, you want me to do what? Walk by the camera? Because we were never like to be around the camera. So I did what he asked me to do. I didn't quite grasp what it was going to look like. And it wasn't until a year later that I saw the movie on cable, and no joke, they come back from commercial break, and the only person in the frame is me walking down the street. It was really cool. It's not a movie I'd watch again and again, but hey, I'm in the movie for a few seconds, first walking down the street, and then when it comes back from commercial, I'm right there, and I walk with the camera and then out of camera so that I stop. And then the guy's like, okay, turn around. Now walk back between the actors and the camera. So I actually cross in between the actors and the camera, which is really cool. But that took all day. But it was really cool to be able to go to class that night and go, where have you been? Oh, I was at the mall. Oh, where were you? Oh, I was filming a movie at Paramount. That's not intimidating at all, is it? But that was the last big thing that I did because I needed a regular job. I needed a job that was steady and it wasn't me on the phone all day because my unemployment was going to run out. So that was when I decided to forego the mall and look into employment at a local theme park. And I'm not sure how that worked out, except that I've been there 20 years. So that was the right decision, right? But I had a good time doing all that extra work, and I've always loved being involved in productions and stuff. You know, the cool things I've got to do was Greg and I worked 20 seconds on a movie called License to Kill, the James Bond movie. There's a scene in the film where James Bond kills a guy on a ship and knocks his body into a drawer full of maggots that I guess they're using for fishing or something. I don't know. But Greg and I spent an entire weekend making those stupid maggots for that movie, which were really fishing lures with the tails cut off. So we spent an entire weekend cutting the tails off of these fishing lures, like mindless work. But hey, when that movie came out, I was first in line because we did something, and you could see it in the movie, and it's James Bond. Oh, Jeff, it's Timothy Dalton. He's still James Bond. He only made 2 movies. Hey, stop voicing my head. Pierce Brosnan was better. Yeah, I know Pierce Brosnan was better, but it's still James Bond. It's the 2 worst James Bond. That's not true. License to Kill and Living Daylights are not the worst James Bond. Who am I arguing with? I don't know. Sanchez! That's just for me. And anybody who listens to the Hollywood Saloon. Sanchez! I'm getting punchy. It's almost an hour on this episode of all the nonsense that I've done. I hope I didn't bore you to tears. I swear we're going to get back to dissecting actual finished, completed movies next week. In the meantime, if you want to see a fun thing that Rachel and I did, we are in the first 5 minutes of the Snowball Effect documentary on Clerks, the 10th anniversary edition DVD. And that's fun to talk about because I love Clerks, and eventually we're going to talk about the whole View Askewniverse and what it means to me, and how cool it was that they filmed Clerks 2 right behind Knott's Berry Farm. It's true. At an old Burger King that I used to take Luke to all the time. Sanchez! All right, we're done. This is 91 Reasons. I am Jeff Tucker. Thanks for listening. The best way to support the show is to go on iTunes and give us a review. I would love if you did that. We've got 6 great reviews up there. Great people have gone to the trouble of logging onto iTunes and giving us a review. Please do that. That's the only way we're going to advance in any way up the iTunes chart. But if you don't, that's fine too. We still love you. You can also go on Amazon.com and check out my book series, The Sixth Key. There are 3 books available: The Sixth Key, The Lost Station, and my newest book, The Infinite Backward, coming next year. Book 4, The Ice Temple. If I can just stop talking about the movies and get back to writing. I'm only kidding. I'm writing all the time. I know I have a deadline, a self-imposed deadline on Book 4. But hey, who knows? Halloween Haunt is coming, so come to Not Scary Farm and say hi, because I have spent the last week in a maze I'm working on called Trapped, which is one of the hardest projects I have ever done in my life, because it's complicated and fun and scary. And the building is 115,000 degrees in the heat wave that we're having here in California. But hey, you don't care, because who knows where you're listening. We've got listeners all over the world. Thanks to everybody listening in America, Canada, UK, France, Portugal, Ghana, New Zealand, you name it, Scotland, somebody in an Asian country in China that I don't quite recognize because it's Chinese characters. Thank you all for listening and telling your friends about us. The more people that listen, the more motivated I am to do even longer and crazier episodes about all the nonsense going on in my brain. I'm talking a mile a minute. Soon I'll be the Micro Machines guy. Remember the Micro Machines guy? This is, or was, 91 Reasons.